Welcome to the County Training Program webinar session for newly appointed requesting and receiving officers. My name is Sherri Schieffer, and I am co-hosting this training along with Embree. We will be using the purchase order form and receiving report form as the basis of our training. If you do not have a form with you, we encourage you to pause the presentation and have one in front of you for reference. Our objective today is to provide a brief overview of the purchasing responsibilities and form. Even though the purchasing agent is responsible for all purchasing, several people in the various county offices have certain responsibilities in the purchasing process. As a newly appointed requesting or receiving officer, you will play a very important role in ensuring the proper checks and balances and internal controls in the expenditure of public dollars. So let's get started. In most counties, the county clerk appoints the purchasing agent. The purchasing agent and the clerk's office have separate responsibilities in the purchasing process. The purchasing agent has authority within the law to develop, implement, and promote policies and procedures that allow for the procurement of materials and equipment. It is important to spend a few minutes with your purchasing agent and allow them to take you through the procedures as developed within your county. The purchasing agent has several responsibilities as set forth in law. They are responsible for preparing and soliciting bids for those purchases in excess of the bid limit, which in 2013 was $10,000. They will also notify vendors of bid acceptance, and in certain situations they will be responsible for soliciting telephone quotes. And purchasing agents generally coordinate requests, contracts, and purchasing activities for the county. The county clerk plays several roles in the purchasing procedures. Their role in purchasing is to ensure adequate funds are available before the purchase is made. The county clerk keeps the budgets for all county departments. Their role in purchasing is to ensure adequate funds are available before the purchase is made. Encumber means to set aside. All purchase orders must be encumbered before the order is placed. The clerk will also audit the purchase orders for proper documentation before submitting it for payment to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners serve as the governing board for the county. They will award all bids and make all payments and approve all contracts. It is important to note that only the Board of County Commissioners has authority to enter into the contracts on behalf of the county. No other elected official or purchasing agent has this authority. The board will also prescribe and maintain an inventory system. We will not be talking about inventory today in this training session, but it is a very important process in the internal controls of the county and something the auditors will be looking at. The county officer or department head ensures the legal, ethical, and proper purchasing practices are being met. They will also designate in writing the appointment of requisitioning and receiving officers. They will review all bids and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. And of course, they will annually review their inventory. Your elected official has designated you as a requesting or receiving officer. As such, you will play an important role in ensuring that supplies and equipment are available in your department. The requesting officer in each office has the responsibility for letting the purchasing agent know what supplies, materials, and equipment are needed and write a description for each of those in such a way that the purchasing agent, the vendor, and the receiving officer will know exactly what is being ordered. The requesting officer completes the requisition part of the Requisition Purchase Order Claim Form 1116, which Ann will discuss a little bit later. If the purchase is greater than the bid limit, which in 2013 was set at $10,000, the law requires a bid. As requesting officer, you will help write the specifications. These specifications will be made part of the competitive bid process, which requires a legal publication of at least 10 days. You should provide the purchasing agent with a list of vendors that you would want to receive a bid. The purchasing agent will complete the bid documentation and advertise. All bids will be opened by the Board of County Commissioners. And of course, you will continue to work with the purchasing agent to facilitate all other purchase, whether they require a bid or not. Each office of a department should have 2 receiving officers. The receiving officers must visually inspect all items received in their office or department to ensure that they are the items ordered, both in quantity and quality. The receiving officer, when signing the receiving report, is certifying that he or she has made an inspection and that the goods are exactly as requested on the purchase order. You need a receiving report for all items that are purchased. However, payroll and travel are exempt from receiving reports. If utility bill statements are verified by signature and date, no additional receiving report is needed on them as well. All other deliveries must have a receiving report. A receiving officer usually maintains the inventory as well. Your elected official will designate you as an inventory officer and assign those specific duties. An encumbered purchase order. It is the law. Any county officer or purchasing officer that incurs a debt in excess of the appropriation available therefore shall forfeit and be removed from office in a manner provided by law for willful maladministration. So this is a very important part of the purchase order process. An encumbered purchase order will certainly ensure that you have sufficient funds, but it will also almost certainly ensure that the proper purchasing procedures have been followed. An encumbered purchase order means that you, as the requesting officer, the purchasing agent, and the clerk have reviewed the purchase and signed their approval before the order is placed. Now we are going to take a detailed look at the Purchase Order Form 1116, and Embree will guide you through this form.
This is Embree, and now we are going to be discussing the two forms that the requesting officer and the receiving officer will be using in the purchase process. The requisition purchase order claim form is State Auditor and Inspector Form 1116, which, if you have a paper copy, is identified at the top left corner of the document. And we have numbered this form on the different lines to make it easily identified what should be completed in each number. So starting with number 1 is the requisitioning number. The definition of requisition is a written or printed request, so that is our form that we are using to purchase something. Some counties use the requisitioning number and some do not, so you will need to check with your county to see how this is handled. We go to number 2. Is this a blanket purchase order? If it is, you would check this box. Now, the definition of a blanket purchase order is recurring goods from one vendor. So you could have a blanket purchase order, most likely for the month, and you go to one vendor and you would put it all on this blanket purchase order. Or we might have a blanket purchase order for the repair of machinery and equipment, and if it exceeds $5,000, then the statute tells us it must be put on a blanket. The other thing that is different about a blanket purchase order and a single purchase order is a blanket purchase order must have prior board approval. So it goes through the Board of County Commissioners meeting before you spend the money. Number 3 is the requisitioning department. Whatever department or office is requesting this purchase would be put in at that line. Number 4 is the project number. If you are doing a bridge project, those are all numbered, and you need to keep all your purchase orders together on that project. That would be a good place to put that. If you are receiving federal funds from FEMA, federal funds have to be audited separately than our other funds, so that would be a good place to put the numbers and keep that separate. Number 5 is where the requesting officer would put the suggested vendors that should be contacted. Now, the purchasing agent is the one that is to contact the vendors, and they would have to utilize the bid limit, or the bid list, if we have a common bid for vendors on the item that you are purchasing. And then on number 7, we're going to skip over number 6 because we don't know at this point who the purchase order is going to be issued to. So number 7 is where we are going to ship whatever we are ordering to. Now, it may not be the physical address of the courthouse. It may be to a county barn or a jail that is off-site or a health department. So wherever that is going, that will make a difference of what the freight is maybe charged, which might make a difference on your purchase order. So that needs to be filled in. Then we go to number 8 and we enter the quantity of the item or items being requested. So how much are we ordering? Then going to number 9, the unit of what we are ordering. Is it gallons? Is it tons? Cubic yards? Or whatever it is that we are ordering needs to be filled in there. Number 10 is the description of the item being requested. Now, there is no such thing as miscellaneous items. It needs to be described adequately enough for the receiving officer to identify it when they receive the goods, because they are to visually inspect the quantity and quality of whatever is being ordered. So you have to describe what it is so they will be able to do that. And then we go back up to the top part of the page there in the middle and talk about number 16, and we enter the date the materials are needed. Now, we're still on the requesting officer's role in the purchase order process, and we need to fill in number 19. That would be the maximum amount that this requesting officer would want to spend on this purchase. So we are committing that much money, and then you would put the account from which the payment is to be made, and then you would sign it and date it. Now, we cannot spend more than $10,000 in 2013 is the current bid limit, or whatever the current bid limit is, unless we bid a purchase. And we cannot split purchases to avoid bidding. That's the definition of splitting purchases. So that would be considered a misdemeanor. So now the requesting officer has completed their portion of the purchase order claim form, and we have taken it to the purchasing agent. On number 17, the purchasing agent enters the date the requisition was received in their office. The process for the purchasing must begin within 2 days after they receive the purchase order in their office, and this is done by the actions of either shopping, they do it by telephone quotes, or bidding. If it is higher than the current bid limit, the amount encumbered on number 19, you would have to go out for bids. The purchasing agent does the appropriate action, and then they will forward the price to the requesting officer when they get those prices. Now, you can use the state contract, and if that's applicable, they would also send that to the requesting officer. The requesting officer is going to be the one that suggests the recommended vendor. We do have the term lowest and best. So if the requesting officer chooses the best price, but it is not the lowest price, then they have to state in writing the reason, and it really should be documented and able to defend your reasoning, and that needs to be attached to the purchase order and returned to the purchasing agent. Some counties have adopted different policies for purchasing under the current bid limit, so you need to check with your county to see how this is handled. If number 19 was over the current bid limit and we needed to go out for bids, that is done by publication, and the sealed bids would be returned. They are to be opened in an open meeting during the Board of County Commissioners meeting, and the competitive bidding process is a function of the purchasing agent. If a bid has been required and the bids have been opened during the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, then the bids are forwarded to the requesting officer. They will notify the board in writing of the vendor they recommend for award of the bid. If for some reason the Board of County Commissioners do not select the recommended vendor that the requesting officer selected, they must notify the requesting officer in writing of their reason for not selecting that vendor. But the Board of County Commissioners do have the final authority. We now go back to the role of the purchasing agent. We now know who the vendor is going to be and what address we are going to be sending the warrant to. So we now can fill in line number 6. We know how much the unit price has been quoted from the vendor, so we can fill in the unit price on number 11. And then we would fill in the amount to be encumbered for each item listed on number 12. Now at this point, if the total in column 12 exceeds the amount that the requesting officer agreed to commit to this purchase on number 19, you need to go back to that requesting officer and get approval to exceed that amount. On line number 21, then the purchasing agent would complete the form by entering the fiscal year, the date, the appropriation account from which the funds are to be encumbered, and then they would sign it. The purchasing agent then forwards the form to the county clerk, and then the county clerk would have the following procedures. On number 18, we would have the date it was assigned. Number 20, we enter the purchase order number. That number is a sequential number that is kept in the purchase order calendar book in the county clerk's office and is assigned to this purchase. And then on line number 22, you would complete the form by entering the date and signing it. Once you have completed line 22, you do have an encumbered purchase order. That is what you are certifying. So now the order can be placed with the vendor by the purchasing agent. We go to line 23. That is the charge and invoice to, and usually that's going to be the name of the county clerk and their mailing address. The invoice actually is to be mailed to the county clerk's office, but we find in most cases the requesting officer is the one that receives the invoice, but they need to then see that the original is delivered to the county clerk's office. We now have an encumbered purchase order. We have an order in place, and you are awaiting the delivery of the goods. We will talk about the receipt of the goods on the receiving report in a few minutes. Right now, we will complete the purchase order process. At this point, a receiving report should have been completed and compared to the purchase order, and the receiving officer verifies that if it is a blanket purchase order, they are certifying on line 26 that the encumbered amount has not been exceeded. So the one issuing the purchase order and receiving the goods are the ones that are responsible for not exceeding a blanket purchase order, not the purchasing agent. Now at this point, the requesting officer must provide written justification if there was an overage and attach it to the form. We have to keep our documentation of why this happened, and it needs to be attached to the blanket purchase order. This shows that the purchasing agent on lines 13 and 14 makes the adjustments. I actually think that it might be whomever takes care of the appropriation ledger in the county clerk's office that would make the adjustments. But however the process works in your office, just so that we are consistent and that it is done. If the amount of the original purchase order was more than what we committed to in the original purchase order, we need to adjust that account, and we would have to take out more to pay for this purchase. If for some reason the amount was not as much, you would credit that account on your appropriation ledger. Most times the purchase order is not going to be for the exact amount that we pay a vendor. Freight charges differ, and so we have to make adjustments. That is done in lines 13, or columns 13 and 14. We are now preparing to have the claim form completed and get to the Board of County Commissioners for payment. On line 24, the county clerk is certifying the date that the purchase order was returned for payment. On line 26, the clerk should certify that the blanket purchase order process is completed. And we now have our document package and is ready to go to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration of payment. Now, our document package consists of the purchase order. We need to have the invoice and the receiving report. We will hold the document package for 3 days or more after the consideration for the payment date is processed. The county clerk will then forward the document package for payment to the Board of County Commissioners. Now, we talk about number 15 is the amount that is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. This figure is probably already put into the purchase order before it goes to the board, after the county clerk's office has made their adjustments. On line 27, we have approval of the governing board. This is done in a meeting. We have our chairman of the Board of County Commissioners and the 2 members. So they would date and sign this. This may be done by a stamp, and that is also acceptable. Then the county clerk's office is responsible for the payment of the claim, so we will issue a warrant from the county clerk's office. Those are kept in sequential order from whatever fund and account you are paying this warrant from. That is filled in on number 28. The inventory card requires a warrant number, and so this is a place you could get that warrant number if you would go to your purchase order and look. And then 29 and 30 show the account number from the appropriation ledger that this purchase was made, and the warrant number from which it was paid. And those are kept on the side of the page, so when this piece of paper is put in a file folder and in a drawer, you can see the account number and the warrant number when looking for different purchase orders. That concludes our discussion of the requisition purchase order claim form. The other form that we are going to be talking about is the receiving report. All purchase orders must have a receiving report, and that is part of our document package that we have been talking about, with the exception of the travel claim and payroll and utilities. But on the utilities, we need to verify and review the bill and make sure that the services that the county is being charged for is for property that the county owns, and that the dates are correct. And those should be initialed to show internal control. Blanket purchase orders may have multiple receiving reports, and every day that we go to the vendor on a blanket purchase order can have one receiving report, and then the tickets are attached to that. So you should have a separate receiving report for each date. The receiving report is State Auditor and Inspector Form 4030. This should correspond with your purchase order, so if we have used a blanket purchase order and mark that on our purchase order claim form, then that should be marked on our receiving report. The name of the county is filled in. The name of the vendor that the goods were purchased from. And then number 3, how did we receive the goods? How were they delivered? Was it done by a vendor truck? Was it done by a commercial carrier? Did a county truck deliver it? However that was done, that needs to be filled in on line number 3. Number 4, if you have availability to the numbers on the delivery tickets, you would include that here. Number 5, if you use the requisitioning number on number 1 on the purchase order claim, that would be the number that you would put on number 5 on the receiving report. Number 6, the date that you put on the receiving report is the date of delivery. Number 7 would be the requisitioning department. Was it the county treasurer, the county clerk, the commissioner, or whomever was initiating the purchase? Would be the department that you would put in the line number 7. Number 8 is the purchase order number. This should attach the purchase order as part of your document package. And then number 9 should be the quantity that you ordered. Number 10 would be what we received, the actual quantity. You are visually inspecting the quantity and the quality of what you ordered. On number 11, you would show if there was anything on back order. And then number 12 would again be the unit of measurement. Did we get a dozen? Did we get gallons? Did we get tons? Cubic yards? What is it that we ordered? What is the unit of that? And then number 13 should match up with our purchase order. What did we order? Not miscellaneous items, but it has to describe it good enough that the receiving agent can identify what was ordered. Is there anything damaged? Remember to document, and if there's not room on this front side of the receiving report, you could attach another page. Then 14 talks about the unit price. This needs to be checked and shown back on your original requisition purchase order claim. How much was the unit price? If the unit price on your invoice is different, the receiving officer should refuse the goods. And then 15 would be the total purchase of what you ordered. Number 16 is a place for any remarks. Was there something that happened on this shipment? Anything that you need to document or remark that would jog your memory when looking back at this receiving report of something that happened. And then 17 is where the receiving officer signs off on the receiving report. You are signing off that you visually inspected the quantity and the quality of the purchase received. Number 18 is the signature of a delivery person. Counties differ in how they handle this. Some county clerk's offices want the delivery person to actually sign this document, and some allow the receiving officer to just put the name of the person that delivered it. However your county handles this is how you need to do it in your county. This ends our discussion of the two forms that are used in the purchasing process by the requesting officer and the receiving officer. We will now continue with Sherri talking about resources.
Thank you, Ann, for the detailed explanation of the purchase order form and the receiving report. This last section of the webinar, we will share with you some of the other resources that are available to you. The purpose of the county training program is to help county government officers and their employees execute their duties more effectively, efficiently, and professionally. To achieve this mission, the county training program provides several resources, including short courses such as this webinar, certification classes, handbooks for several officers' groups, and technical assistance. County elected officers and their deputies are partners in these efforts. They serve on advisory boards, help create published materials, and sometimes participate directly in instruction. We encourage you to take the 2-day purchasing class that's available to all employees. This webinar has just touched the surface of your new duties as requisitioning or receiving officer. We will take a few minutes to introduce you to some of the resources that are available to you. The County Training Program website provides multiple tools at your fingertips. Our website address is highlighted in blue. Looking along the left side, you will see Contact Us. A single click will take you to the staff directory. Ann and I are available to answer any questions you might have. Please feel free to contact us. Our training schedule is also available online. This is where you can register for classes. Frequently Asked Questions is another great resource. If you have a question, someone else probably does too. Let's take a look at these two resources. This is the training schedule. By clicking on the Sign Up, you can register for a class. The date, time, and locations are provided along with a suggested hotel. The testimonials are comments from individuals that have taken the class. The course description will provide you with additional detail about the class. The Frequently Asked Questions is set up by a simple word search. If you have a question about inventory, by typing it in the box and checking the disclaimer, it will provide you with a listing of all questions regarding inventory. Most all questions will reference the statute for additional information and the handbook resources. Unfortunately, not all questions have a specific answer in the law and are subject to interpretation by the state auditor and inspector, as well as your local district attorney and sometimes the Attorney General's office. Please be aware that these answers are not legal opinions. In difficult situations, please solicit input from your elected official, purchasing agent, and district attorney. Going back to the home page, this slide shows the lower half of the left-hand side of the screen. I would draw your attention to the Handbooks link. This is a listing of the handbooks as published by the County Training Program. Purchasing Procedures has its own publication. By publishing these online, it is easier to keep them current with changes. A single click will take you to the handbook. This is an index page. You can click on the subject line and it will take you directly to that page in the handbook. There are several other links built into the handbook. The State Auditor and Inspector's Office is responsible for forms for the county. By clicking on the blue link, it will take you to the State Auditor and Inspector's home page. You see the Forms tab right underneath the State Auditor and Inspector's heading. All purchasing forms can be found with the County Clerk's Office. Here's a partial listing of the forms under the County Clerk's Office. The link we clicked on was Form 4050. Clicking on this will bring up the form. Some forms can be filled out online and printed. they cannot be saved. We have highlighted some of the other purchasing forms that can be used. We reviewed 1116, the purchase order claim form, and we also reviewed Form 4030, the receiving report. As you can see, there are multiple other forms that relate to the purchasing procedures. By using your back arrow, you can return to the handbook. There are other links to the statute law as reference. Clicking on the green link will take you directly to that section of law. This will allow you to read additional information about this particular subject. These are just a few of the resources available to you that make your job easier. We encourage you to utilize these resources, and please feel free to contact us if you have questions. We are nearing the end of the session. We thank you for the opportunity to share the general procedures of the purchasing law. Again, we encourage you to spend time with your purchasing agent to have a complete understanding of your county's policies and procedures. The next 2 slides will test your knowledge, but we have provided you with the answers. We encourage you to review the questions and test your knowledge. And have a great day.